We invited this group to come together to talk about what has happened on the Class 6 primacy front in some of our neighboring states. So I talked to you during the CUSP meeting, Class 6 primacy and making sure all of our regulations and statutes are in alignment to account for and adjust and compensate for all of the needs to implement a CCUS project at a commercial scale. So working with your state legislature and your offices, it's very important. And being the technical experts in the arena, you are a small but mighty community. So make sure that you are very vocal about your expertise and that you could be a resource for those who are making policy decisions in this front. So really want to welcome our neighbors in Arizona, seeing what's happening in your state so we can learn and grow on that together.
I just want to say thank you to Daniel for making time to be here. It's really important for this particular group. And so I've introduced the group, at least CUSP, and the working states and all the people that we've worked with over the years to Daniel, and in light of their challenges, that we're aware of in the neighboring states especially, and then our own challenges, how to navigate this space, which is all moving quickly and changing quickly. So it's been really nice to connect with Daniel. He's been really just helpful on all fronts. And in addition to that, or in parallel with that, the Oil and Gas Commission that is also under the same department where Daniel's from has been working with the pore space legislation and revising statutes and rules to address that as it relates to underground injection and other things. But so this has been really good for us, and we're happy to talk with Daniel all the time. So Daniel can present sort of the outline that he's going to go through, but I will say that his over 30 years of experience in hydrologic evaluations, environmental consulting, geologic investigations, permitting, and contaminant characterizations, and has been a principal hydrogeologist with Arizona Department of Environmental Quality since 2019. And so we're happy to have you, Daniel, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. Hey, thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. And, hopefully that pore space legislation will get through here shortly. That'll be a real big deal moving forward on the carbon sequestration front. So really, it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to present to the Carbon Utilization and Storage Partnership. And really, I'd just like to present an overview of Arizona's pursuit of state primacy of the UIC program, and some of the challenges that we've had. If you'll note here in the slide, this is actually there's a picture of the Morton Salt facility. It's one of the 3 facilities in the state that have Class 3 UIC permits. So I just wanted to point that out before I get going here. So just a quick overview of the presentation. I want to talk about the current state of Arizona's primacy package. ADEQ did receive approval from EPA Region 9 on the package November 6th. So it's just very recent, a couple weeks ago. Definitely want to talk about the Arizona regulatory process for establishing primacy. Arizona's UIC program really must meet all the federal safe drinking water requirements. And I want to talk about the budget and funding of the program. It's noteworthy that the Arizona's UIC program will be funded through a fee-for-service model, which really it presented some challenges, for the program moving forward. Want to talk about the staffing and resources. We do expect the program to grow here in the near future, but the current state, at least in terms of the UIC permitting, there are only 5 permits and 3 facilities that have UIC permits. Although we do have an additional 65,000 Class 5 wells, those type of wells under the UIC program are authorized by rule, but we do require a registration process for Class 5. And then I want to talk a little bit about the training and development of staff. We will be routinely training staff as the program grows through in-house training modules and through outside sources. And then And then finally, we'll talk about program benefits. And really, it comes down to, in Arizona, we're obligated by licensing timeframes, which is much different than EPA, which does not have any licensing timeframes. So, with that, there'll definitely be some built-in efficiencies in the permitting process. So currently, EPA regulates the UIC program in Arizona, but the Safe Drinking Water Act does allow states to assume primacy of the UIC program. And really, that's the heart of the topic of what I'm presenting here. Some states can apply for partial primacy, but in Arizona, we're going to be applying for all 6 well classes. And this slide just kind of gives an overview of the various well classes, and in the current state in Arizona has shown there are only 3 facilities that have class 3 UIC wells that will include Morton Salt. Morton actually has 3 individual UIC permits for their 3 injection wells. Whereas Florence Copper and Gunnison Copper, those are in situ copper mining operations. And those will operate under, or we're currently operating under EPA's regulatory authority under an area-wide permit. Talked a little bit about the class 5 wells in the state. Really, class 5 wells, it's basically anything that's not a class 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 6. It's for most part of the states, dry wells, large septic systems, or aquifer storage and recovery wells. But in the state, we do have over 65,000 dry wells. And as I mentioned previously, those are authorized by rule and do not require a permit. Now, some types of class 5 wells will require a permit. And a good example of that would be like geothermal type wells. And of course, we'll be applying for the class 6 UIC wells, and those used for the injection and sequestration of carbon dioxide. And currently, state we don't have any class 6 wells. So this just gives an overview of the state of primacy across the nation. The dark green shading indicates states that have primacy on overall 6 well UIC classifications. That includes Wyoming, North Dakota. Light green shows states that manages some UIC well classes. In the lightest green, for example, Colorado only manages class 2 oil and gas wells. And then finally, the gray shading shows states where EPA manages all UIC well classes. And of course, Arizona is amongst those states. So this slide, it just shows the governing statutes and rules for the state's UIC program. And really the meat of it is in the governing UIC rules, which are provided in, Arizona Administrative Code, Title 18, Chapter 9, Article 6. And those were established a little over 2 years ago in 2022. So this slide just gives an overview of the UIC rulemaking accomplishments, and really this was really the first element you really need to take care of, before you even pursue primacy. And the formal rulemaking and codified rules was really a major accomplishment, for ADEQ. And the process really started in 2018 and ended with the effectivity of the codified rules in the fall of 2022. And really, the first step here was including a communications plan for developing a path forward. And that followed, the ADEQ rulemaking activities, which really need to be approved first by the governor's office. And so once approved by the governor's office, a notice of docket opening is published by the Secretary of State in the Arizona Administrative Register. And then the next step, we conducted several stakeholder meetings, with the opportunities for the stakeholders to comment on the draft rule language. This is a very important process in the rulemaking. And then a notice of proposed rulemaking was published in the Arizona Administrative Record, to open the formal public comment period. So after the After the comment period closed, ADEQ responded to comments and delivered a notice of final rulemaking to the governor's office for final approval before submitting the package to the governor's regulatory review council for consideration. So after GERC, governor's regulatory review council approval, ADEQ delivered the notice of final rulemaking to the Secretary of State office, which was finally published in the fall of 2022. And so the UIC rules in Arizona are really codified in 10 parts here. There's the general provisions, there's general requirements and the authorization and required permit conditions, and of course the permit requirements for each well classification. This kind of shows the body of the regulatory framework. So this slide, this lists the primary components or the components of the state's UIC primacy application that we submitted to EPA. There's a governor's letter. This is really a core element from the governor of the state, requesting approval of the UIC program. And then there's a program description. The program description describes the scope, structure, coverage, and process of the state program. And then there's also an Attorney General statement. So the Attorney General statement is really a certification that the state statutes, regulations, and judicial decisions demonstrate adequate authority to really administer the UIC program. And then there's a memorandum agreement between the state and the EPA regional administrator. And for Arizona, that would be EPA Region 8 or Region 9. And the memorandum agreement really describes the administration, implementation, enforcement of the state's UIC program. And then finally, there's a copy of the state's UIC statutes and regulations. So states seeking primacy must, really demonstrate that their regulations are effective in protecting underground sources of drinking water. So this slide just gives an overview of the UIC application timeline for Arizona. The UIC application really begins with the effectivity of the published Arizona UIC rules, which were established in September 2022. Then the primacy package included an intensive review process with EPA Region 9. And the primacy package was submitted for public notice in the fall of 2023, which followed by a 30-day comment period and public hearing. And then the final primacy package included formal response and a summary and summary of public comments. ADEQ submitted the primacy package to Region 9 last March for the formal review. The package was approved and submitted to EPA headquarters just 2 weeks ago, on November 6th. So that was a major accomplishment. And we expect EPA headquarters to take about anywhere from 10 to 12 months to complete. So we're hopeful that we'll see primacy sometime in the fall of 2025. That's what we're hopeful for. So I want to talk about the programmatic funding structure. So it's a bit of a challenge for the program. The UIC program will be funded through a fee-for-service model. Really that's a funding structure that calls for each program to support itself. That differs from a general funding model where the funding structure is supported by tax revenue. An example of that is EPA and probably other U.S. state regulatory programs. In Arizona, this is actually mandated by statute, where environmental regulatory programs must be self-sustaining. So, ADEQ's model is that the UIC program be self-sufficient. So this slide just gives an overview of the permitting annual registration fee structure. This was developed after a number of conversations with the primary stakeholders, mainly Morton Salt and Florence Copper and Gunnison Copper or Excelsior. So, we kind of walking a tightrope here. We didn't want to overburden the stakeholders with too many fees, but at the same token, we really need to have enough revenue to adequately manage and regulate the program. So really, for area-wide permits, we'll be charging a $10,000 annual fee. For Class 1, there'll be no annual registration fee, but there will be a per gallon disposal fee. With the minimum fee set at $10,000 a year, and then the maximum fee capped at $25,000 a year. And then for individual well classes, 2, 3, and 5, those fees are really to be based on the rate disposal in a given year. Of course, for Class 6, we won't have any annual registration fees, but we'll be charging 8 cents per ton, but with the minimum fee set at $10,000 per year. So it could quickly go beyond the 10 grand per year fee rate. So the biggest challenge for the program is establishing an appropriate fee structure. Like I mentioned before, we just need to have enough revenue to run the program. So as part of the fee structure, we're also charging an additional $145 an hour for doing technical reviews of permit applications. But the department will also review the adequacy of the UIC fees and revenues and make adjustments to balance out, potential surpluses or shortfalls, every 3 years. We don't want to generate too much of a surplus, but again, we want to make sure we have enough to run the program. So this is a visual representation of the allocation of UIC funds to staff proportion. And really, the majority of this funding is going to be going towards compliance and inspections and permitting, followed by legal support and upper management and administrative support. This is a visual representation of the projected revenue stream into the UIC program. Note that the Class 5 revenue is really going to be from a $200 registration fee. 41% of the revenue will also be generated from not only the Class 5 fees plus an EPA grant, and then the remaining 59% of the revenue will come from permitting, with the per well flat fee and hourly billing rates. And this is a visual representation of full-time employees. Initially we're thinking that'll take approximately 3.2 full-time employee equivalents to run the program. And we're estimating that it'll probably be an annual cost of approximately $460,000 to implement and administer the UIC program. So this slide just gives an overview of some of the bases and assumptions we used for the fee structure. At least initially, we're assuming one full-time employee dedicated doing dry well and Class 5 inspections, and really going to be targeting dry wells that we think are higher risk. And those dry wells would be in areas where they store hazardous waste or do any type of fueling or maintenance operations. And then at least initially for Florence, Morton, and Gunnison, quarter FT for doing inspections at those facilities, and then nearly 2 FTEs for doing the permitting, compliance, enforcement, and management of the program. And the basis for our model, really, it was based on 500 billable hours, set the $145 hour per rate. And then the annual permitting fees, about $10,000 per area permit, and then the per well flat fee of $200. So we'll be applying that for area-wide permits like Gunnison and Florence. And, that revenue stream could really increase for us, as those facilities expand in the near future. So each Gunnison and Florence will likely expand anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 injection recovery wells. So they'll be fairly big operations. And then we estimate that we'll receive an EPA work grant of $105,000 per year. It's kind of on the low end. And of course, a classified one-time fee of $200 per well. So, based on past registration, we expect to receive about 1,000 new Class 5 registrations per year. So that'll be a pretty good revenue stream for us as well. And then not shown on the slide is that we did receive recently an EPA grant for running the Class 6 UIC program, and that was almost $2 million. More than half of that's really going to be dedicated for developing a data management system. It's called the risk-based data management system, and the Groundwater Protection Council is going to help us implement that and customize it for our needs. So we're hopeful we'll get that in place by the time we get primacy next fall. So we'll talk a little bit about the training and staff development. Initially, we're going to set up a budget about $10,000 per year. And, training will really come from multiple sources. EPA does have a UIC online interactive training modules, and that's actually done through the Fed Talent platform. They also offer annual UIC inspector training. And then also another source that we're looking at is the Groundwater Protection Council. They're currently developing underground injection control, training modules. And I know they're currently developing, modules really specifically related to Class 6 UIC wells. And then, of course, the National Groundwater Association, which has courses available for geochemistry and geophysics and other related topics. And then the Texas Railroad Commission, actually, they customized some training for us a couple of years ago, which included well drilling and well completion, mechanical integrity testing, and carbon sequestration and cavern storage. And then we've also developed in-house training modules, and really, hopefully, as the program matures, we'll be developing more in-house modules as we move forward. So really, I mean, what's the benefit of Arizona's acquiring UIC primacy? So really, it comes down to local access to ADEQ expertise and personnel and customer service. A streamlined permitting process and really a reduction in cost through elimination of dual applications and dual compliance requirements and dual reporting obligations. So just to backtrack a little bit, prior to adopting our new UIC rules back in 2022, there was actually dual regulation on our facilities at Florence and Gunnison, where they had to also have to have aquifer protection permits and UIC permits for their injection recovery wells. Now, with the adoption of the UIC rules in 2022, the UIC injection recovery wells that are permitted are exempt from the aquifer protection program. So that was a big development in adopting those rules. So of course, there'll also be local control, with the regulators and easy access to ADEQ regulators. So really, what it comes down to is just a one-stop program rule, and it really, in my opinion, it comes down to in Arizona we have the licensing timeframe, which really ensures that the permits are evaluated, or the permit applications are evaluated in a timely fashion and issued in a timely fashion. And this is a real departure from the federal EPA program, which doesn't have any licensing timeframes. So with that, it concludes the concludes the presentation. Thank you so much.